The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jenny Woods with the Local Government Commission. Thanks for joining us today. We're happy you're able to participate. We have a great panel of speakers lined up to share some information with you about their drought response efforts in California, and we have speakers from throughout the state. So we have good geographic coverage, great speakers, and it'll be lots of fun. So I'm just going to get us started. So in terms of webinar logistics, if you guys have questions at any time during the webinar, you can type them into the question box in your control panel, and then I'll read them aloud at the end of each presentation, time permitting. And there'll also be time at the end of the webinar for more Q&A if we don't get to it right then. You can also use the raise hand function, and I'll unmute you and you can ask your question then. So I encourage you to start thinking of lots of questions to ask the panelists, and I hope there's lots of engagement after their presentations. As with our other presentations and trainings that we've done for you, we will be posting all the PowerPoints from all the speakers and the resources that they share today, as well as a recording of the webinar on our website. So we'll let you know when those are available. So just a quick overview of the training before we get started. We're going to start off hearing from Carolyn about the impact of the drought in California and current state response efforts and resources. And then we're going to turn it over to Lauren, and she's going to discuss the Paved program, which is a financing mechanism. And then we're going to hear from Joel from Santa Monica, who will talk about some of their efforts to move towards zero net water in their community. And then last but not least, we'll hear from Lisa about the drought response efforts in Tuolumne County. And then again, as I mentioned, there'll be some time at the end for Q&A and closing remarks. So with that, I want to introduce our first speaker. Carolyn Adams is an associate planner and research analyst in the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. Carolyn joined OPR in June 2014 and focused on projects related to state drought response and resiliency, water use and management, and environmental justice. Her work ranges from helping implement solutions for small water systems to projects related to water technology and innovation. And she holds a bachelor's degree in history from Scripps College.
All right, thanks so much, Jenny. As Jenny mentioned, I work in the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and my work primarily focuses on drought and water. Here at OPR, I work with Debbie Franco, who is our lead on water and drought, who is also a resource for questions, and also with Wade Crowfoot, who is the Deputy Cabinet Secretary in the Governor's Office and co-chairs the Governor's Drought Task Force. So what I'm going to do is give an overview of some of the drought impacts throughout the state, and also highlight some of the state actions for emergency response and also long-term drought resiliency throughout the state for future droughts. And then Jenny, I will just move right on to the next slide. So we're in our fourth year of the most severe drought in California's recorded history. The image on the screen right now is from the U.S. Drought Monitor, and you can see the areas that are in exceptional drought. It's that darkest red color. The most recent Drought Monitor map shows that 46% of the state is in a condition of exceptional drought, which is up from 36% from this time last year. There are a wide variety of impacts of drought, and the panelists after me, I'm sure, will touch on some additional ones, but I just wanted to give an overview of some of the impacts. A first important one is on reservoir conditions. Reservoirs throughout the state are well below their historic averages. Reservoirs are around 1/3 of their capacity or less and dropping. And you can see, oh, Jenny, I'll just move on to the next slide. Sorry about the delay. You can see on the screen now that on the right side is the most recent map showing current reservoir conditions. The red line on those bars shows the historic average, and then the full bar shows the reservoir capacity. So you can see that our reservoirs are far lower than their averages. Precipitation in some areas of the state is at the lowest point since we began keeping records in the 1800s. Groundwater levels are also very low throughout the state. Groundwater level depletion poses risks of land subsidence and well issues and failures for public water systems, private domestic wells, and agricultural wells. In years with depleted surface water, groundwater pumping increases, and we saw that last year in 2014. Next slide. Another impact is on snowfall and snowpack. This graph shows the snowpack over previous years, and the statewide snow survey on April 1st of this year found that the water content in California's snowpack was only 5% of the April 1 average, which is by far the lowest reading on record for that date. The previous record lowest snowpack for the first day of April was 25%, to give a comparison. Next slide. Next, I'm going to touch on some impacts in some specific areas throughout the state. Last year, UC Davis worked with the Department of California Food and Agriculture to release a study of the economic impacts of drought in 2014, and some preliminary results of the study of economic impacts of drought in 2015 have been released. Some of them are here. Most impacts are in the San Joaquin Valley, although it's important to remember that they're not evenly distributed. Impacts to individual growers and communities vary widely. Some of the major impacts are reduced irrigation water, fallowed acres, job loss, and also total loss to California's economy, not just within the agricultural sector. The estimates for 2015 and the preliminary results from the UC Davis study indicate there'll be a $2.7 billion loss to the economy, and within that, great losses to crop revenue and livestock and dairy revenue. Jenny, I'll move to the next slide. The area of drought impacts that I work most within is impacts to drinking water supplies. The drought has impacted drinking water supplies throughout the state. The Governor's Office of Emergency Services is the lead on state response to dry and critical wells throughout the state. To date, a little over 2,000 private wells have been reported as dry or in critical condition, which has impacts an estimated 10,445 residents. The State Water Resources Control Board provides assistance to public water systems that are impacted by drought, and the Water Board works to provide funding assistance and technical assistance to make sure and provide solutions to communities facing drinking water challenges. Next slide. This year's wildfire activity is also 52% greater than the 5-year average for this same time of year. CAL FIRE keeps a map regularly updated showing where the active fires in the state are, and that map is here on this screen. Next slide. The final area of drought impacts that I'll touch on before moving into some of the state actions to address the impacts are environmental threats. A primary concern in environmental threats posed by the drought is preventing saltwater intrusion into the interior delta, where a large portion of the state's freshwater supplies are conveyed for human use and for agricultural use. If there's not enough water in the delta to maintain adequate flows throughout the year, then the state's two major water projects, the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project, lose control over salinity in the delta, and freshwater sources traveling through the delta are contaminated. There's a salinity barrier placed by the Department of Water Resources in collaboration with partner agencies in the delta now to protect from saltwater intrusion. In coastal communities, the reversal of natural groundwater flows to the ocean as a result of groundwater pumping can cause seawater to enter the aquifer system, which can also compromise groundwater, and it's very costly and difficult to manage. Lastly, managers of state and federal and also privately owned wildlife areas are coordinating their operations to address potential impacts of drought to fish and wildlife, and also migratory birds that depend on California habitats that fly through the state every year. Next slide. There are a wide range of state actions, and I'm going to highlight a few. The first is state actions on increasing water conservation and conservation awareness across all areas. And secondly, I'll talk about some policy actions the state has taken, including drought emergency funding for ongoing drought relief and resiliency programs, and also some programs that are upcoming in coming months that you might want to keep your eye out for. Next slide. Save Our Water is the statewide program aimed at helping Californians reduce everyday water use. It's a partnership that started in 2009, and it's between the California Department of Water Resources and ACWA, which some of you might be familiar with, the Association of California Water Agencies. And the goal of Save Our Water is to spread ideas and inspiration for permanent water use reduction in California communities. Save Our Water has a toolkit on their website that is aimed at local water agencies and local governments, as well as private sector partners, and it has materials that might be helpful. It has templates for conservation outreach, tips for agencies, and other items to promote conservation in communities. More recently, Save Our Water has a few new initiatives. They've, in the past month, partnered with California Relief to promote the importance of proper tree watering during the drought. It's definitely a state priority to keep valuable trees and urban forests alive through this drought. Save Our Water is also partnering with the California Native Plant Society to expand online landscaping tips. A state priority is to shift the culture away from green lawns as the norm for beautiful California landscapes and move towards more drought-resilient landscaping. Next slide. The state has also authorized drought emergency funding over the past 2 years. They're aimed at a few areas, protecting and expanding local water supplies, improving water conditions, and providing emergency relief for impacted communities. Some of this funding goes towards projects I talked about more at the beginning with the impacts, and then for public water systems and private domestic wells, and it also goes to other programs including wildfires and impacts to fish and wildlife. As I'm sure many of you know, watching the media, on June 1st of this year, the State Water Resource Control Board mandated conservation at all urban water agencies in the state to reduce statewide water use by 25%. And this is the first ever statewide conservation mandate. The 25% savings in potable urban water use will amount to 1.2 million acre feet over the next 9 months. And that's nearly as much water as is currently in Lake Oroville. It was just announced that the state actually surpassed this goal, and the conservation statewide for June was a very impressive 27%. Next slide. The Water Board also requires some water rights holders in key watersheds throughout the state to report data on their water use to help inform the best water management decisions. And also, the Water Board has issued notices to rights holders that have to discontinue diverting water in critical watersheds for a given amount of time. There are other state programs managed by a variety of agencies, and that includes assistance to workers unemployed due to the drought, food, rental, and utility assistance, as well as employment training for farm workers that are unemployed due to drought. More recently, in the past month, the state has also made funding available to help families without access to potable water relocate to a new home if they choose. Next slide. There are some upcoming programs as well that aren't online yet, but are in the works. The actions authorized in the governor's April executive order a few months ago will save water, increase enforcement to prevent wasteful water use, streamline the state's drought response, and also prioritize investment in new technologies to address California's drought and also build long-term resiliency. A few of those programs are listed here. The Department of Water Resources recently updated the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, and the California Water Commission just adopted the ordinance recently in the past week or two. And the goal of the ordinance is to promote a drought-resilient landscaping in new and retrofitted landscapes. Again, that's part of reducing water use that is used outside in California. About 50% of residential water use goes towards outdoor irrigation. So not only will this promote water savings, but it'll also help move that culture shift away from lawns as the standard landscape and towards more climate-appropriate landscaping. Additionally, the state's rolling out a turf replacement rebate and direct installation program with that same goal. In coming weeks, there will be a new program to provide rebates for turf replacement to pull out lawns and put in drought-tolerant landscaping. And then there'll also be a direct installation component for disadvantaged communities that have been most affected by drought throughout the state. That same model will be applied to a toilet rebate program. The state has funding to provide rebates to swap out old toilets for high-efficiency toilets. Toilets are the largest water user inside the home, so this will make a huge impact in residential water use. And there'll be a direct installation component of that as well in disadvantaged communities that have been affected by drought. An area that I've been working in a lot recently has to do with increasing deployment of cutting-edge technologies in the state. There's a grant program at the California Energy Commission for emerging and promising water energy technologies that improve water use and management and also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I'm working on an initiative in parallel within the governor's office and in partnership with our key state agencies to increase deployment of water technology throughout the state. The governor's office recently hosted a summit on water technology and the California drought to explore opportunities for how we expand deployment of promising technologies to better use and manage water and how we address barriers to that deployment. In coming weeks, will be key findings from that conversation about where the areas of greatest opportunity are and what we might consider doing as a state to really expand technology, and that will be available online. The final upcoming program I'll touch on is an appliance rebate program. There will be rebates available to decrease residential water use through more efficient appliances like high-efficiency dishwashers. Next slide, Jenny. I listed a few resources that might be helpful for folks working with local and regional agencies. The first is drought.ca.gov. That's where all the latest news about the drought is, and that's where additional resources are announced as soon as they become available. So it's definitely a good place to check regularly. Additionally, there are links to a variety of other resources on that drought.ca.gov webpage. It's the landing page that can direct you to all sorts of more specific resources and state agency drought websites. Also, OPR here has a drought web page specifically for local governments. It's currently being revised, and in the next few weeks, it'll be expanded with additional resources. So it's definitely a place to check now, and then keep checking back in a few more weeks, and hopefully they'll find some helpful resources there. Thirdly, the OPR Local Government Drought Toolkit was developed in 2014 and hasn't been updated to include the most recent executive order or conservation regulations, but it was designed so that it could be easily edited and updated by local agencies and adapted by a local agency's need or interest. So there may be useful templates and links in that toolkit as well. And finally, the Save Our Water Agency Toolkit has templates for conservation outreach. I know conservation outreach is something Lisa's going to talk about later, so you might find she'll probably direct you to some resources as well. But that toolkit might be helpful for your work. Next slide. And I'll just leave you with some contact information. I put my email address here. I'm a good first contact if you have any questions or want to have a longer conversation about drought response and resiliency or about the state programs that I talked about. The Drought Clearinghouse website at OPR is also a good contact to have. We check that inbox regularly for drought-related questions, so feel free to reach out to me directly or through the Drought Clearinghouse if you want to have a longer conversation.
Thank you, Carolyn. That was great. So I just sent out a little message reminding you to please type in your questions in the question box or use the raise hand function. We will start off with our first question, and the person said, it seems that the majority of water conservation efforts are aimed at residential water use. Is there any legislation that also regulates the water use of the private sector, such as major companies or stores that use large amounts of water?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I'm not expert in all of the conservation regulations, but there definitely are conservation regulations for commercial and industrial users. I can't think of the number off the top of my head, but commercial and industrial water use certainly is an important part of water use in the state, and there's a lot of area for conservation there. In my work with water technology, I know that industrial and commercial users have been at the forefront in adopting innovative technology to help stretch their water supply as far as possible and reuse water as much as they can. But the Water Board, if whoever asked the question wants to reach out to me directly, I can send you links to the Water Board's conservation regulation language, and I believe that there are recommendations for industrial and commercial users. And in addition, I'll just add the water agencies have the ability to meet that 25% conservation as they see fit within their local operations. So water agencies might reach out to commercial and industrial users where they work on conservation with them directly.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions right now? If not, you can always think of others and ask it at the end. We'll give it about 30 more seconds if I see any hands or questions in the question box. If not, we will move on to our next presentation. Okay, well, thank you so much again, Carolyn. We really appreciate it. We know you're very busy, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and share your thoughts. And folks, keep brainstorming questions, and she'll be around at the end to answer any more. So up next, I'm pleased to introduce Lauren Casey, and Lauren is Deputy Director of Climate Programs at the Sonoma County Regional Climate Protection Authority, which works to coordinate a countywide response to climate change. And she, as I mentioned before, will be talking about their PAYS, which is an on-water bill financing. So with that, I will turn it over to Lauren.
Great, thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Carolyn, for such a fantastic introductory presentation that laid forth the nature of the challenge and some of the things the state is doing, all the things, the great things the state is doing to respond to the drought. So as Jenny mentioned, I am part of an organization called the Regional Climate Protection Authority, which is a collaboration across the 9 cities of Sonoma County and the County of Sonoma. In this role, we've helped support a number of pilot programs, including the one that I'll be speaking about today, the Pay As You Save program. And we originally pursued a PAYS pilot beginning in 2012 through the DOE's Better Buildings program, as we were looking for a tool that would be complementary to some of the other tools in Sonoma County to help property owners invest in resource efficiency. And obviously in recent years, resource efficiency programs that serve water conservation have become increasingly important and increasingly interesting to jurisdictions. So we were really excited to have learned some things through our PAYS pilot with the town of Windsor and are now working to expand this demand side solution to the drought. So go ahead and advance the slides, Jenny. I'll go through a quick overview of what Pay As You Save is and what we've learned through our pilots, and we'll definitely try to leave ample time for questions because it's a new model and I find that lots of people like to ask questions about it. So go ahead. So this graphic is a nice simple illustration of what Pay As You Save looks like from a customer perspective. PAYS is a unique system for helping utility customers install efficiency measures at no upfront cost, and it's structured around an offer of immediate positive cash flow. So if you look at this diagram, before participating in the program, customers own inefficient equipment or they occupy a building with inefficient equipment, and their combined utility bills are high, that left bar. Through the PAYS program, they can receive measures like toilets, shower heads, drought-tolerant landscaping, and LED lighting from their utility at no upfront cost. They then pay for these measures over time via surcharge that's added to their water bill that is less than their combined utility bill savings. So after participating, their utility bills are significantly lower and they enjoy the benefits of these measures as long as they are a utility customer. If they move or the measures break, they're no longer obligated to pay the PAYS tariff. Go ahead. If you look at it from a program perspective, these are the relationships that make the PAYS customer offer possible. In our pilots, a water utility and the program operator that's either internal, their conservation department, or a contractor that operates the program, that entity offers, they select contractors and measures that are eligible for the program and ensure the quality of those contractors and the warranties on those measures. That contractor then visits customer sites, screens their existing equipment and usage patterns, and qualifies those customers using a field tool. Many of the basic measures can actually be installed during that same visit. So the customer, after receiving an audit and qualifying for measures, signs a purchase agreement that enables them to receive measures and pay for the benefits they receive using out of their utility bill savings via that surcharge that was described on the previous slide. The surcharge is then used to repay the capital that was deployed to pay for the installation of measures. Go ahead. We're really excited about this model because it's very beneficial for all the parties involved. Customers receive quality products in their home or building at no upfront cost, and all aspects of the program are overseen by their utility. The utility achieves water conservation in line with their conservation targets and has participants pay for the value that they receive, which allows them to repurpose dollars currently spent on rebates or direct install programs in more strategic investments. Go ahead. What we've found is that the customer offer is what really sets PAYS apart from other efficiency programs. Participating in the rebate program requires upfront capital and an investment of customer time. And most water utility customers don't have the resources, either time or financial, to figure out how to capitalize on cost-effective investments in their property. Also, because the PAYS surcharge is attached to the meter and is offered to utility customers rather than property owners, renters are eligible to participate in the program, and it does not affect a participant's credit the same way as a loan would, or as would be participating in a PAYS, property assessed clean energy financing program. So if you advance the slide, Jenny. Hopefully many of you have heard of the PAYS model. PAYS, again, stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, and it's a financing tool that's available in the state of California to help property owners install energy and water efficient equipment as well as renewable energy systems on their property. And it's a fantastic tool. However, it's only available to building owners and is typically used for larger, more permanent measures like insulation and windows and solar. It's used far less often for water improvements because there's typically a fairly large project minimum, upwards of $2,500 or $5,000. So I think another thing is that to do a PAYS project, the property owners manage all aspects of it, from scoping which measures to do, reviewing contractor bids, and taking care of the applications for financing. PAYS, on the other hand, Pay As You Save, is completely managed by the utility. And really, it's structured around making the offer of participation in an efficiency program as easy as possible for the utility customer. We've seen that all of those factors result in an ability to reach new and different customers and market segments with efficiency financing, most specifically renters and multifamily properties. So go ahead, advance. In the Windsor Efficiency PAYS pilot, customers are eligible to receive the following measures. These basic measures, toilets, shower heads, and aerators, actually affect a significant portion of indoor water use. As Carolyn mentioned, toilets can often be the single biggest water user in a household or in a residential building. So customers have to install the basic measures if they're eligible. If their existing equipment is efficient, they can be pre-qualified for the Basic Plus or co-pay measures. Those include lighting measures, compact fluorescents, and LEDs, as well as clothes washers and drought-tolerant landscaping. Customers also have the option of adding enhanced measures, slightly more fancy landscaping measures, and additional appliances if they're willing to pay some co-pay such that the tariff they pay for these measures still qualifies for the goal of bill neutrality. Go ahead, one more. So this is an example of a PAYS project in the town of Windsor. We've been working with multiple multifamily buildings. So this example is a 40-unit building in which the property owner installed one basic package in every unit. The total estimated project cost was $18,400, which was funded through a bi-monthly utility PAYS surcharge of $400. But their estimated combined bill savings were $590 a month. So immediately they had a net positive cash flow of $190 and an annual savings of over $1,100 a year. Go ahead. In Windsor, we've seen this program have really exciting results. In the first 2 years of operations, we managed to retrofit 5% of all residential units in the town with water and energy saving measures that achieved, on average, 20% of indoor water use savings, 10% of energy use savings, and an average utility bill savings of $15 a month. That's for a single family home. In the multifamily space, we've seen even more significant bill savings of over 30% indoor water savings on average. The town has also in the last year begun to expand their program to the commercial sector to allow for irrigation controllers that will hopefully help save a lot of their large corporate customers significantly in their outdoor irrigation. Go ahead. Based on the results you've seen in the Windsor pilot, we've been working with, through a partnership called the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, which is a collaboration of the 9 counties of the Bay Area to deliver energy efficiency and water efficiency programs. So we've been working through BayRen to expand the PAYS model and test it in different markets and customer classes through partnerships with the City of Hayward, through the East Bay Municipal Utilities District, and the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. And they're all at different stages of deploying their own pilots. We're also working really hard on a new initiative at a regional level that would allow more utilities to participate in PAYS by creating a turnkey model that any utility could opt into. We are really excited to see these pilots progress because we believe this program is in line with the direction that resource efficiency programs need to go in the state, to be accessible to more customers, to be really easy for customers to participate in, and to move away from subsidizing cost-effective investments, which does allow for program dollars to go much further in achieving the desired impacts. So with that, I would love to answer any questions that you all have about the Pay As You Save pilots. And I put my contact
Thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate that.
No problem. I was going to say, I thought, oh, shucks, I thought I guess I did put my contact information on the last slide after this one. So, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Lauren? I'll wait just a minute. Okay, well, seeing none right now, people may still be thinking and may have questions at the end, so thank you again. Really appreciate it. I always enjoy hearing updates on where you're at with the PAYS program. So next, I want to turn it over to Joel, and Joel is the Sustainable Building Advisor for the City of Santa Monica. He is responsible for implementing policies and programs that facilitate the city in achieving its long-term sustainability goals for the built environment. So Joel, I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So I actually really like how we just went from the state level to a regional level and now down to a city level. And specifically, I'm going to be discussing a specific building project. So really great story of water conservation here at various levels. So yeah, my name is Joel Caesar. I am the Sustainable Building Advisor in the internationally recognized Office of Sustainability and the Environment here in Santa Monica. Santa Monica is a fairly small city, 8 square miles, completely surrounded by Los Angeles, and a population of 90,000 people, yet we employ 15 dedicated staff specifically to sustainability issues. So it kind of gives you some context of the innovative place that we get to work in. So next slide. And then, so this shows some of our boldest targets and goals that we have either achieved or are currently working on right now. And I'm going to in a bit present a building project that is being designed to use no municipal water in a place that got 3 inches of rain last year. So it seems like an impossible task, but I think this gives you a little bit of a background of why it's possible here. Our citizens, our businesses, our elected officials take a lot of pride in the city continuing to be known internationally as a progressive leader in sustainable city planning issues. The Sustainable City Plan we published in 1994, we believe was the first ever of its kind by a city. And you can see here some pretty lofty targets. And the way we work is we set bold targets and then we develop quantifiable, data-driven, action-oriented plans to meet those goals. And specifically today, I'm going to talk about the context of this water self-sufficiency by 2020. So next slide. So this is depicting the State Water Project. We in Southern California, across the state, this is where the majority of major urban areas get their potable water. We source headwaters from the northern Sierras and we distribute it across the state through various aqueducts, pipes, and canals. You can see there on the right, that is the lift of water over the Tehachapi Mountains that that's where the water project reaches Southern California. So we raise water 2,000 feet there at the Tehachapi Mountains. It's the largest single lift of water in the world. The State Water Project uses 11,000 gigawatts of energy per year. It produces 6,000 gigawatts. So, you know, there is hydroelectric power along the system, but as a net user of 5,000 gigawatts of power, it is the state's single largest consumer of energy. So there's numerous reasons why the city would, as a downstream entity of this project, would want to be self-sufficient. And I think probably most important to my department is trying to relieve ourselves of the embodied energy and carbon footprint of this water to try to meet our long-term carbon goals. So next slide. So this plan to be water self-sufficient, it's actually a long story I won't get too much into related to one of the country's largest environmental lawsuit settlements in the mid-1990s that Santa Monica negotiated with a consortium of oil companies because of contaminated groundwater that we now are able to access because of that settlement. And that, with those funds we got in that settlement, we were able to reverse our reliance on the state water project from being getting 30% of our water from local groundwater and 70% from the state water project. After we received that settlement and we invested the money in a large treatment facility and distribution system from the groundwater, we now currently get about 70% of our water from local groundwater and only 30% from the state water project, with an ongoing goal to try to reduce that 30% through water conservation and augment some of our existing supplies with another groundwater well, so that we will be water self-sufficient by 2020. And as we learned in some of the earlier presentations, there is a risk of overburdening our aquifers, and I can attest we thoroughly researched the sustainable recharge of our aquifer as part of this water self-sufficiency plan. So next slide. And so this slide shows a little bit more detail about this path to water self-sufficiency. And as you can see, the top blue line, the top solid blue line, is our demand over time of water that's needed in the city. And you know, you see that is growing, and that's because we anticipate our population to grow, and there's actually a development boom happening in the city right now because of a new light rail that's about to enter from Los Angeles. But what's really interesting about this is we were able to achieve this water self-sufficiency by 2020 plan while also building in this anticipated development boom. So it really attest to the work that we are doing and plan to continue to do to reduce the demand side through conservation. And you know, this plan was in place well before the drought, so this wasn't a knee-jerk drought reaction, which of course is necessary at the moment. But this was a plan that we were proactive in pursuing years ago because numerous reasons, as I described, but there are long-term, very robust realities related to our carbon footprint by getting our water from locally sourced. And I think I'm going to get now next into the building level, but it's cool to look at from a city level. When you're looking to be water self-sufficient, or you want to call that, you know, net zero water, which was what we refer to it from a building standpoint, you have to approach it from both the supply and the demand side. So, you know, we can translate the lessons learned and the approach we do from a city municipal perspective down to the building level. Next slide. So I'm not sure how familiar the audience is with the concept of the Living Building Challenge, but the Living Building Challenge is a third-party green building rating system that we are using as the framework in the design of a new commercial office building that the city is going to build. And the Living Building Challenge is, you know, it's described as more than just a green building rating tool. It's a philosophy and an advocacy tool as much as anything. And this slide is showing that the metaphor of the Living Building Challenge is as a guidance to building and for designing and building buildings. We should try to think of that building as a flower. And it's actually pretty interesting when you think about a flower. It harvests all its own energy and water. It processes all its own waste. It has a symbiotic relationship with its neighbors. And shouldn't we be able to build structures that are designed to do the same things? And it's this paradigm shift of a LEED certified building, which makes a building less bad, to a Living Building Challenge building, which is environmentally restorative. And I like to think of that as this paradigm shift of building being resource consumers to building being resource producers. So, you know, we feel really confident that we will remain on the leading edge of sustainability by embracing this concept of Living Building Challenge. Next slide. And this is a project, so this is a three-dimensional simulation rendering of the project, but the building in the forefront is our existing City Hall. It's a National Historic Landmark built in the 1920s, a beautiful building, and then just behind it, the building with the rectangles, the darker rectangles on the top, that would be the rendering of our new City Services building, which we are currently designing at the moment. And it's designed to be a 3-story, 50,000 square foot office building that will be attached to our City Hall. And you can, I think you can click to give me a transition. You click once. Okay, there you go. So Living Building Challenge, without getting too much in the weeds on what it requires, the main focus of the imperatives that you need to achieve are: the building has to be net zero energy, the building has to be net zero water, and the building can contain no cancer-causing chemicals. So it's actually, when you speak to most building professionals who've been doing this for a long time, it seems like a pretty radical idea. But it's been around since 2006, and there are 7 projects in the world that have achieved it. If Santa Monica can achieve and can continue on the path we're on, we would have the largest, and we would be the only municipal project to achieve Living Building Challenge. And in the context of this conversation, we're here to discuss water and the drought. We find it really powerful to be able to tell the story that, like I said, in Santa Monica, we got 3 inches of rain last year, and now we're proposing to build a building that will use no water from the municipal system at all. So not even from the self-served groundwater of the region. This building will harvest all its own water from its own footprint. And I'll get to exactly how we plan to accomplish that in a second. But you can see here I know this conversation isn't about energy, but like I said, with the State Water Project and the embodied energy in it, in a lot of ways, energy is water, and water is energy. And if we had an unlimited supply of either, we could produce the other from it. And there's a lot of buildings that can probably try to achieve net zero water with some very sophisticated, high energy intensive systems, but then they wouldn't be able to be net zero energy. And then there's buildings that can be net zero energy, but if they try to incorporate ideas to be water self-sufficient, then those two, obviously there's a relationship between the two, and what's really cool about the Living Building Challenge is it constantly requires you to think about both as you embark on a building design. Next slide. So I'll get a little bit into the specifics here in a second on the design, but I show this slide at this standpoint because we went through a 16-week feasibility analysis of whether or not first we could build this building at all inside the budget that was provided to us by our city council, and then secondly, how sustainable could we make that design. And when we first started, there were people on our team. This was a full design build team. We had a contractor, an architect, engineer, a landscape architect. This was an early schematic design of a project that we went through during this process, and we had numerous people who were very skeptical of the Living Building Challenge. There was conversations in some of the first meetings like, let's just take it off the table. It's not possible. We have to figure out how to build this building under the budget and not even worry about how sustainable we can make it. But we really embraced this philosophy, which is showing here. The idea of this slide is showing where that number 1 is on the top left of the graph. That's showing the x-axis is basically a time of design, so the time scale of when you start. So pre-design all the way to at the end operational. So we're right here at the very beginning of it. It says PD on the x-axis, pre-design. And this slide is showing that your ability to impact cost and functional capabilities of the design of that building is highest at that moment. But usually people don't ramp up their effort until you get to the middle of this x-axis during construction document phase. But if I could instill one lesson learned from this project, that we then were able to go to council a few months ago and show them a full design concept with a thoroughly researched budget analysis, and said, we can build a Living Building Challenge building right here in Santa Monica within the budget you gave us. I would attest that it's because that we embrace this mindset to put more effort into the design up front. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. Go ahead. So I won't spend too much time on this. I know this is a water conversation, but like I said, it's important to understand the context of energy. So, the two bar graphs you see there, the bar on the left is a baseline code-compliant building in Santa Monica, and then the bar on the right is what our proposed design is. And the y-axis is energy use intensity, which is this universal unit of measurement that allows us to compare buildings of different use types and sizes to each other with their energy performance. So the code-compliant building in Santa Monica has an EUI of about 39. based on the square footage of our roof and the how much solar energy we quantified we could produce on an annual basis. To achieve net zero energy, we knew we had to get the efficiency, the energy use intensity of the proposed building down to below 22. And as you can see here, our design has us at about 21.3. And I show this in the context of water because you can see on the right the colors towards the top right of the information to the right of the slide says water treatment. And then if you look at our proposed design, that's in the very top, a very thin band. So you can see the energy usage of the energy footprint of our water treatment is very minimal to this design. That's something that we're proud to attest to. So next slide. So this is our water budget, and this is really where the rubber meets the road on the design of a Living Building Challenge net zero water project of this scale. And as you can see here, this is a code compliant water design. And the bar graphs are indicating the supply, so the water available to us. And then the colors in the back, the line graphs are indicating what the water demand is in the new building. What can we expect the usage to be, and what is it attributed to? And I think consistent with earlier conversations, it seems that toilets tend to be the enemy of water conservation. So as you can see here, in a commercial office building, it's the same way. The major contributor to water usage is our toilet. And in this graph, because this is code compliant, we're not talking about net zero water yet, the green bars are showing the municipal water supply. So you can see in a typical project, even when we are doing innovative things with gray water and rainwater, we're still using a lot of the municipal water system. Now we're going to transition to the next slide, which is our net zero water design. And as you can see, the orange, which was the toilet water, has disappeared. And this is how we plan to achieve net zero water in a 50,000 square foot commercial office building. We are going to use fully composting toilets in the building. And I usually get questions when I do this presentation specifically about the composting toilets. I could probably do a whole presentation on the schematics and the design of the toilet systems we plan to use, but I can assure you they're highly engineered, they're design friendly, they're system intense infrastructure, and we're modeling them after the systems that are used in a building in Seattle called the Bullitt Center, which at the moment is widely perceived as the greenest building in the world. And they've been operational with full composting toilets in a 7-story office building for over 2 years now, and are very pleased with their performance, and have a maintenance process that works for them, and is pretty incredible to show that in a Class A high-end office building, you can use composting toilets, and you can meet this idea of the paradigm shift of turning what is usually considered waste into a resource. And that's exactly what they do at the Bullitt Center with human waste. It's eventually, once treated properly, is considered then a resource, and something we hope to bring to Santa Monica. Next slide. This gives a little bit kind of more detail about the scale of what we're doing with the water. And I know this is a little bit busy for maybe a presentation where I can't point and show what's going on, but I think what you can see is interesting here is the level of detail you have to go into from a design standpoint to understand what a water budget is. And like in a LEED certified building, you don't go to this level. You don't understand every aspect of water usage in a building, because basically in a LEED certified building, you're looking at systems and you're trying to get more efficient at each fixture. So you say a code compliant toilet uses 1.28 gallons. If we can buy 1.1 gallons, we're saving water, and that's a good thing. And same with all the other fixtures, whether it be showers or faucets or irrigation and landscaping. I'm not here claiming, I'm not saying I don't agree with LEED and we don't like LEED, but I think when we're really trying to start to get serious about water conservation at a building level, we think it needs to be done with an analysis like this. So go ahead, next slide. And again, this is a little bit busy, but I like showing this slide because I think if you're a project that says, okay, we want to do something very interesting and different and progressive with water, there's pretty much some, 4 major systems that we looked at in the beginning that would be the primary saver of water as compared to a typical building water system. So you see there's composting toilets, there would be stormwater, so this concept of stormwater mining or sewer mining for toilet flushing. There's this concept of constructed wetlands where we would take black water, so we would take actual toilet wastewater and treat it on site through constructed tidal wetlands. Or there's this another more high-end technology and capital-intensive process called a membrane bioreactor, which you blast water at high energy through a very fine membrane. And I think what's interesting about this slide, what we're trying to show is you don't make these decisions in a vacuum. Each decision, each technology, each design has its costs and has its pros and cons, and you have to weigh them against each other. You can see here what was good about the composting toilet is it had the highest probability for us to achieve net zero water. It actually was the lowest capital cost from an installation standpoint, and it had a very low energy footprint. So all of those were big pluses to what we were trying to do. You know, once we got the city staff and maintenance people and decision makers comfortable with composting toilet systems that have been used in other buildings, it pretty much became a no-brainer. Next slide. Now that being said, you know, a no-brainer from a, you know, when you don't bring into the context of what's legal and what's allowed by the code, the plumbing code and the health code and the building code. And this slide was done by the state of Oregon to be a roadmap to water independent buildings, so that when design teams were thinking about these kind of processes, how could they navigate the regulatory process? And you can see here this gets pretty complicated as to, you know, where the water is sourced from, how it needs to be treated, and then what, after it's treated, can it be used for back in the same building. And you can see through these boxes, there are various different agencies that you need appeals from or you need permits from. And this is we really gravitated to this when we first saw this from our consultant early design process, because this gave us a roadmap to navigate the process. Now this is Oregon, so we thought, okay, let's take this and let's modify it to our situation in Santa Monica. We have different laws, we have different regulations, we have different government organizations. So if you go to the next slide, you can see what happened then. So I show this, and I don't expect anyone to interpret what's going on here, but I just show that contrast because it's complicated, and we think we learned less by doing this than we knew before we started. And you know, it just raised our awareness to the fact that as a city that is interested in more building level decentralized water, wastewater, and water treatment and reuse, that we need to insert ourselves in this conversation to better understand the regulatory framework to navigate, so that, you know, when we build these buildings like we're going to do, a city-owned building that's achieving Living Building Challenge, we do that in the hope that it will be a model for the rest of the city to adopt. And we recognize early on, you know, composting toilets are not allowed by the code right now. If a private entity in Santa Monica wanted to use them, they could not. And I just showed you that we've become confident that we think they're a good design. So we need to make sure over the next few years, as we complete our design process and hopefully build this building to the way we want to build it as is intended now, that by the time it's built and our residents can come and see it and be inspired by it, that this regulatory framework will be cleaned up so that it's a little bit more clear and transparent at that point. Next slide. And this was another cool thing we did, and I think kind of innovative from a standpoint of early design is, you know, we kept talking about this building in Seattle, this Bullitt Center. And there's a number of articles. If you Google the Bullitt Center, you'll see all kinds of articles that say how one building is changing the world. And, you know, it may seem cliche, but I can attest, and we can attest in the city of Santa Monica standpoint, that building being built and being operational has allowed us to get to where we are right now. Now, we have a long way to go, and you know, there's numerous challenges that a municipality faces when they're trying to build our own building. So, you know, I'm not guaranteeing we'll meet net zero water or we'll beat the Living Challenge, but the fact that we got City Council to embrace the concept was directly resultant of a trip that a few of us took to Seattle. We brought our building official, we brought our plumbing inspector, we brought our facilities and maintenance manager, and we sat down with people from the City of Seattle, from the Bullitt Foundation, from the International Living Future Institute, which is the organization that administers the Living Building Challenge program. And through the course of a day, we discussed every aspect of how they got comfortable with the very progressive and innovative systems they used in their building, when at the time the code wasn't really going to allow a lot of them. And we learned about very innovative regulatory ideas that happened in Seattle and in King County in the state of Washington. And it was a great lesson learned. And like I said, it's something that allowed us to get to where we are today. So, you know, very cool story of, as I say here in the slide, agencies coming together to design the environmentally restorative buildings of the future. I think that might be it. Next slide. Yeah, that's it. So thank you, and it's an honor to be on this panel with the other great speakers.
Thank you, Joel. We have a couple questions for you, so I'm actually going to go to one of the slides again and show it. There's someone that's asking if you can explain this map here on the screen a little bit more, because since there isn't a legend, they're just curious to learn a little bit more about what it means.
That's a good question. I can't explain it as well as I should. I use that slide to depict the complexity of the system. I can probably look into this more and get back to you guys on exactly what it means. Or I think I can find the source of this map that probably has a better key. I bet I probably cut it out when I was doing this presentation.
Okay.
But I think
great.
the boxes are showing various reservoirs or places where we store water, and then the lines are showing different conveyance mechanisms to move it around the state.
Great. Well, I'll work with you, and we can put up a map on our resources page with the key up there.
Great.
Another question we have for you is, if drought conditions affect rainfall in Santa Monica, will the building be able to remain net zero water, or will it have to use municipal water?
That's a great question, and yeah, if we are demonstrating the ability to achieve net zero water in a and if you saw me now, I'm using quotation marks, a normal rain year. So I think most of the people on this call would attest that who knows what normal is, and maybe we're existing in the new normal. So in a normal rain year, or at least what we call a normal rain year in Southern California, we would expect to get between 11 and 13 inches of rain. And in that situation, we can achieve net zero water. If we got 3 inches of rain, we probably would not. We would be close, but we'd probably have to augment some of the building to supply with potable water.
Great, thank you. If you guys have any other questions, please type them in now or use the raise hand function. If not, I am going to move on to our last presentation, and folks can always add questions in that we can answer at the end. And I know that there is one other question for Lauren, and we'll get to that at the end. So thank you again, Joel, and we're going to go ahead and mute you now. And next, we are going to turn it over to our next presentation, and I'm going to now introduce Lisa Westbrook. Lisa is a customer and public relations coordinator with the Tuolumne Utilities District, and she has over 20 years of marketing and public relations experience. And with that, I'm going to pull up your presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Jenny. And Joel, that's very inspiring. You know, one thing about Northern California, we always hear, especially in the Sierra foothills, Southern California is not doing enough. So I commend the project that you're overtaking. That's awesome. I think that's great. And I hope that you scream it from the rooftops once it's completed. So that's really good. Anyways, I did want to just kind of give an overview of the many, many challenges our county and utility district have been facing since the drought has started. And here is, let's see, where are we on? We're on the third page. Okay. Our district, I just wanted to tell you where we are. We are in the central, there we go. There we go, Judy. Okay, so this is a picture right here on the very beginning is Lyons Reservoir, which is one of our main reservoirs, which in the scope of California reservoirs is ultimately very small. It's only about 5,500 acre feet. And then to the right is just an image of one of the many ditch systems that we have. Our system was originally designed and built by gold miners in the 1850s, and we're still using that as a conveyance system today, which also possesses many challenges. Next slide, Jenny. So this is an overview. I just try to, again, emphasize how small and vulnerable our system is. We only have 2 main reservoirs for our water source, Pinecrest Reservoir and Lyons Reservoir, and both of those are owned and operated by Pacific Gas and Electric PG&E. So where we're located, we're very vulnerable to different elements regarding snow issues. Also, we have a flume that was built also in the early 1800s that's wood that is also connected to Lyons Reservoir. It's called the Main Canal, which is right below that image of Lyons Reservoir, that is very vulnerable to wildfires and also trees going through it. So we're always on alert trying to secure our water supply as much as we can. Next slide, Jenny. And the system that we have is very old, as I had mentioned, and this just gives you an example. The district has 14 water treatment plants. That's what the red dots indicate. So we have a very extensive canal system that we call the raw water ditch system that actually is the drinking water to all the water treatment plants of our customers. And overall, we service about 44,000 people. We have 14,000 connections, but the population that we serve is an estimated 44,000. Next slide, Jenny. So I'm going to just kind of go over what happened last year to the shock and dismay of our system. We, as you can see, we had those small reservoirs. Our biggest indicator for water is the snowpack. Looking at this diagram, if you look at 2014, when we saw what was going on, we were below 1977. And 1977 on record for most people in California know that that was an extremely dry drought year. And we've always been kind of forecasting and modeling our water supply off of the 1977 indicator. So when we saw this, that's the big black line, that at that time, coming into January, that we were below 1977, all the alarms went off. So we started deciding, what can we do? We're going to have to change some operations. Jenny, next slide. So in January, we actually pulled all of our internal staff together, and we started really putting out a plan. What are we going to do if we're going to get no more weather for 2014? How are we going to respond? So January 28th, we actually activated an emergency response plan due to drought, and we were one of the first agencies in California to call for 50% cutback in water use. It was really crazy at that time. We started getting calls from different TV stations wanting to interview us because they had no idea why we'd be calling for such drastic measures. But at that time, on our forecasting, because we did not have good predictions from the National Weather Service that we were going to get any more weather, that it looked like at that time that was about it. So we only had estimated 120-day water supply. So we activated the emergency response plan, and we really started informing and involving anyone we could to let them know that we were in a serious situation. And then February 6th, we reached out to the county and the State Office of Emergency Services for support. And I have to say, Carolyn's boss, Debbie Franco, is awesome. And she was very, very supportive on the state government level to help our agency. Next slide. So as I had mentioned, we started kind of just letting anyone know of the urgency of our district. And part of that was a lot of the agency partnerships that we developed. And we actually then got the Governor's Drought Task Force to hold a visit here to see and learn a little bit more about our system and all the challenges that we were facing. They were very responsive, and to this day, I still hear from different people from that one meeting asking how we're doing, how are things going in Tuolumne County. And it also was a year after the 2013 rim fire, and a lot of them had heard about Tuolumne County for the first time. We also collaborate very well with PG&E because, as I had mentioned, they are the main sources for holding our water supply. And so we started working with them as well and seeing whatever we could do to collaborate and hold more water back in those systems to stretch it as much as we can. Next slide. The other thing that our agency did a little bit different on water agencies and districts. Typically, water agencies hold a lot of information to themselves. They don't usually like to say that there could be a problem. We took it to the extreme that we told everyone we have a problem, and we really got the message out. We wanted the community to know. We didn't want them to one day try to fight a fire or one day try to turn on the tap and there was an issue with the water supply. So we let them know very on that it was a serious situation and everyone needed to conserve. So we pulled together with a bunch of the other water agencies and any other community and county partner that would listen to our messaging, and we all came together and had a uniformed message. And to me, that was really key to the public, that it wasn't just our district saying this message, it was all these agencies. So we actually had this banner, Save Our Water Today, and it went across the downtown Sonora area. People got to see that. That was up a lot. And then we also did a lot of different other messaging as partners together. Next slide, Jenny. So we did a lot of newspaper, radio. We were on talk shows as much as possible. And it was just very, very beneficial. And I think that for agencies and communities, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that you do have partners that will align with you. So for some best practices, keynotes that I would take away with that is before a drought or any community emergency, I would really try and reach out and align with your partners ahead of time. Really try to communicate with them constantly so they just know a little bit about your agency and that they're not trying to find things out at the last minute. And make sure you have the correct contact information. A lot of people do float around and change jobs a lot, and you want to make sure that you have those key people that could help you when you need it so you can reach out to them. And regarding, conservation measures and the other things that Lauren and Joel were saying, our agency just last year, we gave out 330 toilet rebates, which was massive for our agency for just 1 year. Next slide. So how did we do? We did a lot of messaging. So if you look at this, we really started the messaging effort, even though we called for conservation in January. Then we really started hitting it hard, really with print, newspaper, radio. And it usually takes people, I have seen in my marketing experience, at least 3 months to change their behavior or their lifestyle. And we were really gearing up for that. We wanted to have them change and conserve as much as possible going into the summer months. That was our goal. And it looks like we hit that. So starting in May, we had 44% conservation. In June and July, over 40%, which at that time, 2014, was huge because people were just starting really to get into talking about the drought, because even though we were in 3 years, we really wanted people to change their lifestyle. Next slide. So this year, just a little bit different of what we're doing now. The key thing I think that is huge, a lot of people last year when we were doing our messaging, they felt that Tuolumne County was a little singled out because we were having such water issues. How come no one else was participating to the conservation efforts that we were? So this year, having the state support and the state directive regarding the drought, again, we're all in this together. So I think that's huge and very beneficial for our area. We did, TUD imposed a 30% mandatory water restriction for all water users. Our goal from the State Water Control Board was 24% this year. And I have to report that we've done an excellent job once again, and our customers are listening. For June, we had a 41% conservation. And for July, we just are getting close to finishing July, but we're estimating it to be at 42%. And the marketing partners that we teamed up with last year have joined me again on the communication efforts to our customers. And that has helped again with our budgeting and partnerships as well to get that message out. So we're still doing that. Next slide. So where are we at right now for our drought impacts? The biggest thing, our water supply is better this year because we're working with PG&E. We actually had them hold more water back in the reservoir than they usually do in the winter months. So that helped our overall water supply that goes through the reservoirs. But wells are a big issue right now due to the 4th year of drought. It's really impacted people that have been on wells. And a lot of people last year, I have to say, in our area, they said, people would say, oh, I don't have to worry about the drought, I'm on a well. Well, a lot of those people didn't really take into consideration that they should have cut back their water use. So now we've had over 180 wells that have gone dry and 300 homes that have been impacted. But once again, the state has really stepped up. They have a California Disaster Assistance Act program, and we are delivering 2,500-gallon water tanks to these homes to assist them temporarily, and then if they can, we'll connect them to our TUD system, and if not, we'll just continue to supply water until hopefully the drought will end this winter, we're hoping. So that would be great. Next slide. So just an ending note and moving forward, we continue to communicate with PG&E quite regularly. We are always looking at our reservoir levels and trying to see how the conservation is faring with what we have left in the reservoir, and actually we're doing really well right now. Lyons Reservoir, which is the main water supply below Pinecrest, is starting to drop, but that's normal right now. And then we usually supplement that water from water we received at Pinecrest come Labor Day. And we continue to educate our customers on all the ways they can reduce their water. The other thing that we have touched on, a lot of people don't realize this that are in different communities throughout the state, we have a fantastic relationship with the Tuolumne County Master Gardeners Program. And with them, they actually have a booth at one of our local hardware stores. They're there every Thursday giving advice. And we both partner together trying to get people to change out their landscape to native landscape as much as possible. And then we continue to work with our county on different long-term water storage solutions. Again, our reservoirs are small. They really usually only have a 1-year water supply. So we're hoping that with that and possible Prop 1 funding, we can expand that to get a little bit more water storage, at least for 3 years would be a great thing for the community. And then the last note is that one of the biggest things, again, for water agencies is that a lot of them, they don't really want to tell the public the truth. Well, I'm quite the opposite. I want them to know everything that they can, and I think that that really builds trust with agencies as well. So an open, honest discussion about your water supply, I think, is actually a positive point in the long run. And I think that's about all I have. Jenny, next slide, and it just has my contact information.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Let me see if I have any questions right now. I think most of them are for all the presenters. So I think what I'm going to do at this point is unmute all the presenters and just go through the questions and ask them as they come up, since we're getting several. So I'm unmuting you, Carolyn. Okay, so let's just start with the first one. So this question is for you, Lauren. It says, thank you for your presentation. I know in some cases climate action plans included measures that promote PACE programs. If jurisdictions were to promote a program like PACE, would PACE be able to provide tracking information back to them, specifically the GHG reductions?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and absolutely it would. So what we've done with the town of Windsor is we've worked with their utility to figure out the energy intensity of their delivered water, and therefore the greenhouse gas emission savings achieved through cold water efficiency measures. And there's actually a tool under development in the state of California right now. The CPUC has been overseeing that, that helps communities quantify the embedded energy in their cold water systems, which helps translate water conservation programs into GHG reductions.
Great, thank you. And then another question is for you is, have there been talks about future PAYS programs in other regions of California? And if so, where do you believe the next program will be?
Yes, so there's been a lot of interest in PAYS in the last year or so. Again, I think the drought is motivating utilities to start looking for new and different models to complement what they're already doing. And as I mentioned, we're working really hard in the Bay Area region to prop up a model that would be regionally administered and operated, that would be run sort of like the Hero PACE program, if anyone's familiar with that, in which it began as an initiative of a council of governments, and now any municipal government in the state of California can join as a member of Hero so that the program is available to their residents. We're hoping to be able to prop up something like that for PAYS, in which utilities would serve as the collections agent for the surcharge that funds measures installed in their customers' properties, but that could be, again, centrally administered. And if we do move forward on that, it would be focused on our current members to start, to really help them scale their pilots, but that we'd be hoping to be able to start onboarding new utilities soon after that.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Our next question is for you, Carolyn. Will the salinity barrier that you mentioned affect wildlife in the Delta?
That's a great question. I don't know enough about, I am not expert in the salinity barrier or in the habitat, but it's something that Department of Water Resources would know a lot about. They're working closely with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and whoever's question it is, if they want to send it to me directly, I can make sure and connect them with the folks that really are expert in the science of that, and I'm sure that they'd be happy to provide an answer.
Great, thanks. I'm sure we would appreciate that. So I'll follow up with you on that question, Carolyn. The next question is for you, Joel. So it says, from the planning perspective, how do you plan on working around the challenge of codes that don't currently allow planned installations, such as the composting toilets? Are you planning for research or outreach to occur, and do you have a backup plan if they cannot be approved?
Well, we're in a unique position because we're the municipality. So in a lot of ways, in the plumbing code, there's references to a term called the authority having jurisdiction as the responsible party for the signing off of a plan check. So in that case, we can justify and argue that that is the city of Santa Monica's building official, and he is someone who's been heavily involved in this process and has been a part of the decision-making process to choose the systems we've chosen. So we are uniquely positioned to take the leap on some of these systems that would not be allowed by the code. And so I think that's how we're handling our specific project. And then further to address what's happening in the private community, I work very closely with numerous organizations on code advocacy and code evolution, and I can definitely be a resource if there's other people that would like to get involved in this process.
Great, thank you. So at this time, if there's other questions, please type them in now or use the raise hand function. Our next question is for you, Lisa. Over 40% reduction is amazing. What were some of the strategies that were used?
Well, I think, again, it was really a lot of it was the partnership, and it was funny because a lot of people said, well, did you find people? And really, we would put door hangers on people that were not going with our conservation codes at that time. It was just alternating days. And we really believe, again, it was the partnership. I was at every meeting I can think of with the county of Board of Supervisors. We were at Rotary clubs. We were at any kind of agency that would hear our story to tell them how important it was to conserve during this year, and that the community really needed to pull together. And they did. They took the message very seriously. And then after, of course, come in the winter, they're like, well, we made it. Maybe we didn't have to be so strict. But that wasn't the point. The point was we knew that our water supply was very limited, and people did take to heart the messaging. And I think, again, the partnership and everyone unified in the messaging really, really was key in our county.
Great, thank you. Are there any final questions for the presenters? We have a few minutes left. I'll just give about 30 seconds to add in those final questions. Okay, well, if folks have any questions that they think of after the presentation, please feel free to email the presenters, and I'm going to put up their email addresses for you right now. And with that, again, I just want to thank all of our speakers for participating today and really appreciate their engagement, their information, a lot of interesting info that you shared, and I will again post all the resources and the recording on the website after the webinar concludes. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.